So I recently did a video what I did not like about Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I just wanted to do a video talking about what I actually did like about it because I really do like the game overall, and I thought it was really well done, despite me doing a long video criticizing a lot of it. So the first thing I'll talk about is the combat, and the combat is awesome. It's probably one of the best aspects of the game because it is a video game and the main gameplay element of the game is the combat. So if that was bad, then all we'd really have are the graphics, the story, and the music because there's really not any like cool gameplay elements in the field, right? Like there's not some kind of like traversal thing or anything like that, or Metroidvania type thing where you need to figure out where to go, or have the right abilities or equipment to figure out where to go or to get past an obstacle. It's really just the combat. The combat is basically what the player is going to be doing in the game. So luckily the combat is very good. Um, I like that it's not a button masher. Um, and you can get punished for button mashing in the game in certain fights, especially boss fights. Like if you think of Reno or a Rufus fight, if you button mash, you get counterattacked. You cannot button mash and just try to attack those guys. You have to actually like look for tells and figure out when to dodge, when to block, when to counter, and all that stuff, and use the right spells and things like that to help you pressure them, which is really cool. I like that that they incorporated the Stagger System from Final Fantasy 13, which is a game I didn't really care for, but I like that they incorporated it in this game and actually um, made it really well. It made it work. I like that you have to first pressure an enemy in order to stagger them. I like that you're always working towards building up these things, like building up the pressure gauge to turn it into the stagger gauge. I like that you're always building those up. I like that you're building ATB up. I like that when you're playing as Tifa, for example, you're increasing her combo potential. You're always working towards something in every fight. And then I also like that you have to strategize on top of that. So some guys, if you try to hit them, at the wrong time, your weapon just bounces off of them or something like that. So that means you have to strategize. You have to actually have the right material loadout for your characters for a lot of fights. And with that being said, they did a pretty dang good job of balancing the combat with the difficulty and having this challenge to it and a learning curve that's really satisfying. Um, and it just keeps going through the game. It doesn't get stale. Like you can be on your second playthrough, 50, 60, 70 hours into the game, and you're still going to be like having a problem once in a while with like a new boss fight for like the hard mode stuff. Or you're going to have to figure out how to switch up your weapons and things like that. So I like that it's well balanced, and that it's challenging. I love that the boss fights were a spectacle and that there's a ton of them. There's a lot of boss fights in the game, which is what the original was like. There were a lot of cool boss fights. So yeah, I like that there's good end game content. Let's think, what else? The ATB system's still intact, as I mentioned. The tactical mode is very cool because it allows you to slow things down for a second, and it looks super awesome. Even if you just want to use it just to watch everything kind of unfold slowly, it's really cool for that as well. The characters operate like you'd expect them to operate in combat. Like Barrett is big and bulky, and he's slow, he's tanky, and he has abilities that help bolster that. Tifa is super fast and has all these crazy cool combos that you can string together. Cloud is like he has that counterattack ability that nobody else has, and he has like two versions of it. One that requires ATB, which is more powerful, and he can be like a fighter mage type character, where his magic is what is his most powerful thing, or he can be a straight up like fighter, where just like physical attacks are his strongest thing, and that's really great for a protagonist, the main character. It's cool when you can kind of mold them how you want, you know. Uh, and he can be he has good survivability with good health and his counterattack moves, right? Aerith, you know, she's like the best caster, and she has a bunch of healing type moves. I like that she's really kind of light and airy, and um, you know, like some of the new moves she added, where she kind of like floats up in the air and shoots that ray and stuff like that. Like those are just cool little like things they added to show that she's this powerful ancient, you know. And so, and like I said, the characters they operate like you'd expect them to operate based on who they are and what their qualities are like in the battle. It's not like they're all the same kind of mold, you know, like a fighting game where it's like, you know, like a Dragon Ball Z fighting game where it's like you can literally do the exact same thing with every character, and the difference in characters is basically like their special attack, and then just the way they look, and that's it. So I'm glad that each character is actually different and feels different when you're controlling them. Um, Other thing that I liked about the combat is I liked that the summons had to be fought to be gained. The only downside of that is I thought it would have been cooler if they were part of the story, but I talk about that a little bit in the criticisms video. I liked that the weapon skills needed to be used to be learned. Um, and that every weapon was therefore viable in some way, either to learn an ability or you could even use it to the end game. They had pros and cons to each weapon, and that to me was so awesome. I even commented in a video, I think it was on like a Soldier First Class video like a year ago, saying I really hope the weapons have abilities that you can learn and keep the ability you learn. I literally said in a comment exactly what the weapons are in this game. And Katase said in some interviews recently that, you know, they read people's comments, they watch people's YouTube videos, they look for input. I mean, not saying they'll see mine or whatever, but maybe they did see that. Or if they already had it in mind, then I just happened to call exactly what they were doing. But so that's also one of the reasons why I decided to do any of these videos at all. Is like I just want to get the ideas out there. So the last thing I'll say about the combat then is that it has depth, you know, and potential. So now the combat system in this has a lot of depth. The materia system works really well in it. Each character plays differently. And then it also has so much potential because there's all these other cool characters we're going to add in the coming parts of the remake and materia that we're going to add. I mean, there's a lot of stuff we could talk about just about like what we could hope for in the combat in the next parts of the remake, but I won't get into that now. So what else I liked about the remake was I love the characters. I think the characters actually sound and look and act like we'd expect them to if you played the original game. Like one example that was, and I love their interactions too. Like I love when Red 13 gives Barrett like a high five with his fiery tail, you know, like burns him, you know. I thought that was awesome. Like little interactions like that. I actually care about what happens to the characters, you know. It's not like a Star Wars situation that we're in now where you just don't even care what happens. Like the characters are so dumb and so bland and one-dimensional that you're just like they could kill every character in the story and I would not care. That's basically what happened with Star Wars for me at least, and I don't think I'm alone in that. But basically in The Rise of Skywalker, if they would have killed off every single character, Finn, Rey, everybody, just killed them all, made them all turn dark side, like I didn't even care. I just wanted something to happen at that point. Like it didn't matter to me. Whereas in this, I really care about the characters. I would be really pissed if like, you know, they decided to kill Tifa instead of Aerith and change the whole story and just kind of like forget about, you know, Aerith's heritage as an ancient and just throw in Tifa and just be like, there, are you subverted? Are you surprised by that? That would go against what makes those characters, and you know what their role is in the original game story and stuff. That would be stupid. So I actually care what happens to the characters. Um, I love that the dialogue between them, like when you win a fight, I love that it kind of evolves. Like in the beginning of the game, Cloud and Barrett are really hostile towards each other. Like Barrett will be like, "Did you see that?" And he's like, "Must have missed it." You know, like he doesn't care. He's really standoffish and trying to act cool and confident. And then as you get towards the middle of the game, you know, they'll Cloud will say something like "Good job," you know, and then like as towards the end of the game, Cloud will say things like, "You know, we make a good team," and they're like, "Yeah, we do," and like you can tell like they're coming together. They're bonding a little bit more. They're becoming friends. Um, so I like to see that progression in those interactions. Um, the characters, like another good example of what I liked about the characters is I like that Cloud comes off as awkward sometimes. Um, and I think some people might think that that's like bad anime writing or something, but and maybe there's a little of that. But Nojima actually said that because of the 5 year gap that Cloud has in his memory, and it's not, and he doesn't know exactly what's going on with that in his persona. Um, he sometimes has the mentality of a 16-year-old, which makes his confidence feel, you know, contrived or fake, right? And so I think that's so when you think of that and then you watch some of those scenes, it makes a lot of sense. It's actually very well written. So another thing I liked about the game was the music. The music was awesome. It's dynamic. It changes from the field to the battle like seamlessly. It's put in the right places. There's only a few tunes that were kind of like techno-y that I didn't care for because I just don't like that kind of music really, and it doesn't feel very Final Fantasy VII to me. Um, but it's awesome. It's not recycled really either very much. Like they do several different variations of the same songs for different boss fights and stuff, and it's really very impressive and really helps the atmosphere of the game. So the other thing I liked um, was just the environments. You know, I loved the environments, walking through them, looking at everything, uh, listening to the music while you're in those environments. Um, One of my favorites is the church part, and afterwards when Under the Rotting Pizza comes on. Um, that song, when that song came on, I literally said yes out loud when I was playing the game. And I guess like the only thing I would say, like, and I talk about this in my other video, what I didn't like about the game is that the gameplay in the field is like there's not really much to it, right? There's not really anything to it, but but the music and the environments and characters are so good, and the combat is so good that it doesn't really matter, right? Like for this first part, I hope they improve the gameplay aspect of the field a little bit, and I have a video discussing what I think they could do. Um, so then the last thing I'll talk about is a story, which is kind of controversial. Um, so the good thing is that it follows the original game like a lot, so it gives us a lot to feel nostalgic about and see how they're going to rework certain scenes and bring to life certain scenes and characters, and that's really great. I loved that. I actually like that they are being ambitious with the story because it gives us a lot to speculate and theorize about, which is very, very fun. I just hope it doesn't become a Star Wars thing, right? And so a one-to-one remake wouldn't have done this. We wouldn't have had all this speculation and theorizing happening, really. We just kind of would have been thinking of like how it would look, basically, for the story. And then we could probably speculate about like how characters would play out and how they would do the airship or the buggy, which we can still talk about. But now we have this extra thing to talk about, which is where is this story actually going and how does it include the compilation of FF7? And in that sense, it doesn't replace the original game, which is kind of cool. The original game story is still its story and is not being replaced by a remake. This is not the new canon, so to speak, of Final Fantasy VII, and therefore everything you knew about it before doesn't matter. It's still all like canon or whatever, right? So the original game is still integral to the plot. Um, and they're referencing a lot of the compilation. So like Dirge Cerberus, Crisis Core Before Crisis, and Advent Children are all making their way into this remake somehow, which is kind of cool. Even if you didn't like the movie or those games really, like they weren't that good, you know. I like the idea of incorporating the good concepts from those. You know, taking the best things of those and try to incorporate them. I think that's a great idea. Um, Thinking of Star Wars again, that's something they should have done with the sequel. Is like because they always talked about how they hated the prequels, right? Everybody hated the prequels. But it would have been really cool to incorporate the good ideas or some of the reference them in some way, you know, because it's still part of the canon. So I like that they're not just ignoring it completely and just scrapping everything like Star Wars did. So, um, so I think yeah, the story right now overall is pretty excellent actually, and it's really ambitious. And that I'm not going to worry about the story until they totally blow it, you know. Um, I guess the other thing about the story that I really like with this direction so far, in reference to all of our theories and speculations, is that it offers a lot of replayability. Yeah, there's replayability in the game with hard mode and collecting everything and some of those different scenes that you can see. But just in terms of like watching the cutscenes again with like a theory in mind, you can then say like, oh, does that support the theory, you know, or does this branch off into something else I didn't think of? It really gives you a new perspective when you play through the game, which is really awesome. I didn't expect that from this game. You know, I did not expect that from this game. Um, and so, with that being said, I think that the ambition of the new direction they're taking with the story and the new element they've added to it is a good thing. You know, until they totally blow it, and then I'll complain about it, I guess. But um, yeah, so those are some of the things that I liked about the game: combat, characters, music, and story, which is basically the game. So I like the game. And if you want to know what I think about um, the other aspects of it that I thought could be improved, or just some constructive criticism, I did another video called "What I Did Not Like" about FF7 or about the game. So yeah, thanks for checking it out if you do, and have a good one.